Welcome to Never Again Is Now, a podcast about anti-Semitism. Today we have a special guest. The mayor of Beverly Hills, California, will discuss with us how her city and other cities around the globe address the rising anti-Semitism. I am Evelyn Marcus, and in addition to being a psychologist, I'm featured in the documentary about anti-Semitism, Never Again Is Now. I am a Dutch Jew and a daughter of Holocaust survivors. In 2006, I emigrated to the United States because of the rising anti-Semitism in Europe.
I am Phyllis Zimbler-Miller. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, Elgin, Illinois, which was not a Holocaust survivor community. Our parents and grandparents had come the turn of the 20th century to escape the Tsar and other pogroms. And yet in 1970, when only 25 years after the end of the Holocaust and World War II, my U.S. Army officer husband and I were stationed in Munich, Germany, and this changed our lives forever.
The Honorable Mayor Lili Bosse is currently serving her third term as the mayor of Beverly Hills. She was originally elected at the Beverly Hills City Council in 2011 and has previously served as mayor during 2014 and 2017. The mayor grew up in Beverly Hills, graduating from Beverly Hills High School. Mayor Bosse, we are extremely honored to have you on our show. Welcome.
Thank you. And I am so honored to be on your show. And it means I can't even put into words how much it means to me to be talking about this topic that really is the essence of the fiber of my being. So I appreciate that you are doing this show. And I really hope worldwide that people tune in and hear our conversation.
Thank you.
So that's what we'd like to talk about first with you, your personal connection to this subject before we get into anti-Semitism in Beverly Hills and around the world. So would you tell us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. I am a daughter of a Holocaust survivor as well. My mother survived the death camp Auschwitz, and I'm an only child. So my whole life, the pain, the loss, the murder and annihilation of the Jewish people simply for being Jewish is part of the fiber of my being. I had, my entire family perished during World War II. So I grew up with a very strong mom, a very strong role model, who told me every day two things. One was to never give up and to never, ever stop telling her story. That she was left here for a purpose and that I am here for a purpose. I didn't know I was a child what that purpose was or would become, but that it was most important to her that her story of survival, of what happened to our people, that it would be never forgotten, and that we would do everything, and that I would do everything to ensure that this could never happen again.
Where was you originally from?
Originally, my parents were from Poland, and then they went to Israel, and they met in Israel. They got married in Israel. They went to New York. Actually, I grew up in New York in Queens up until I was 9 years old, and went to Jewish day school there. They then moved to Beverly Hills, primarily because as a young child in New York, the climate wasn't good for my ears, so they chose a warmer climate. They sent me to Jewish day school. I went to Orthodox day school for my younger years. And all of their friends were survivors. My parents belonged to something called the 1939 Club. So it really shaped me. And when I ran for office the first time, part of what I had told people was that I am a child of Holocaust survivors. And, I had had a track record of involvement. I was very involved in our local schools. I had served on the Planning Commission, the Traffic and Parking Commission. So people knew me in the community. And so when I would tell people that, it was literally the first thing I would tell people is I'm an only child of Holocaust survivors. And people would stop me and say, why are you mentioning that? Why does that matter? Why aren't you talking about, your civic involvement, which I did talk about, but why did I mention that? And I said, it matters because it defines who I am. It is the essence of my soul, the fiber of my being. It taught me about the importance of community. It taught me about values. It taught me about standing up and having the courage to stand up and use our voice. So I really felt that was my identity, even more than the work that I had done in the community, which spoke for itself. People could look at my votes on different items, but I felt that they understood that I stood for something and that I will stand for something. And that my word is my word, and I have courage and I have no fear, and I will speak out. And that's why, to me, even then, when I said it had everything to do with it, I had no idea in the future. Now, as we sit here in 2023, boy, was I right. It has everything to do with it. And it's important to have people stand up, speak out regarding anti-Semitism. And now I understand that there was something in me that knew it was important to relay that.
And I have heard you speak in the past at certain events, and I have been so inspired by your speaking up against anti-Semitism and telling the story about your mother and what it meant to you. So
thank you.
I'm happy you spoke out. You inspired me, and I'm sure many other people.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, Mayor, if we look at today's anti-Semitism, Beverly Hills, with a total population of approximately 32,000 residents, is one of the only Jewish majority cities outside of Israel. Yet the city has not been spared from anti-Semitic incidents. Could you please describe the anti-Semitism that is going on in your city? And what the impact is on the population of the city?
It's been devastating. I see that we're in a state of emergency in terms of the rise of anti-Semitism, not only in Beverly Hills, but worldwide, globally. How we have experienced it here in our city. We had one of our synagogues was vandalized. We had just recently, this past Hanukkah, one of the residents who proudly displayed their menorah on their property. It was defaced with a Nazi symbol. And then last year, for the first time, and we have had it since, there were flyers that were placed on the first night of Hanukkah in front of people's homes that were blaming Jews for many things. And it has since happened a few times where these disgusting flyers have been put in front of people's homes, so they wake up in the morning and see these anti-Semitic flyers. So, we as a community, as much as this is darkness, when we see this darkness, it has united us even stronger. And the message to those who try to divide us and bring in the darkness is that we are going to be stronger. We are going to fight stronger. We are going to bring in light. For example, this Hanukkah, the night after this defacement, We had a big holiday Hanukkah menorah lighting in our park where hundreds and hundreds of people came, and we showed that we are light. So we as a community face the darkness with more light, with more strength, and we speak out against it. So what is meant to divide us is only making us stronger and more unified. And that's not only from the community that is the Jewish population. It is even our brothers and sisters who are in our community. We have a diverse population who stand by our side, because hate is hate. And we have to stand up to hate. We have to stand up to anti-Semitism, which is Jew hatred. And we have to stand up to hate. And we have to, when somebody sees hatred, we need people to stand up for us as we stand up for them. So what we have seen in our community is a sense of unification, that hate has no place in our city or anywhere in this world. And I myself will stand up stronger, speak out louder, and regardless of what happens, I will never stop. And as my mother said, I will never give up, and I will never stop speaking out until the day comes, God willing, that we don't have to.
So that's great to hear that the reaction was to become stronger instead of weaker.
Absolutely.
And do you have any idea who were the perpetrators of what happened in Beverly Hills in the past 1 or 2 years?
Yes, actually, both in the synagogue vandalism and the other individual with the menorah. You know, we have a wonderful police department, so those individuals were caught, and the people that disperse the flyers, they don't only disperse them here in our city. They have dispersed them in neighboring cities, neighboring states. They are a group on the flyers, so they don't hide who they are. It's a group called goyimtv.com. And this is an organization or a group that has distributed flyers, put up banners in many states and many cities. And they are not hiding who they are, because they put their name and website and such, you know, on their material, which
They're a white supremacist group, I think.
I believe
Correct?
so. I mean, anybody who could spew that hatred is obviously people who have hatred towards Jews, because all of the flyers talk about Jew hatred.
Let's talk about.
And I have spoken out about these flyers because they, you know, are claimed to be protected by free speech. And what I have said publicly is, in my personal view, this speech is hate speech. And hate speech has and can lead to violence, and we have seen it. And for me, where World War II started was with propaganda similar to this, where pamphlets and leaflets depicting Jews a certain way, and then ultimately we saw that lead to violence. So from my perspective, even though you know, currently, you know, this is considered free speech, the First Amendment, I see it as hate speech, and I see hate speech as something that can, and we have seen, hate speech can lead to violence. So when I see these flyers, I speak out to it, and I am disgusted by it, angered by it, and as I said, it only makes me speak louder, and only makes me feel that it unifies us more. It will never divide us.
Talking about unification, let's talk about when you attended in December in Greece, the mayor's conference on anti-Semitism, in which 53 countries and 23 cities participated. And what were the insights there? I mean, this is very exciting that people came from all over the globe. So tell us about that.
Well, for me, it was among the most powerful moments of my life, to be honest with you. To be in Athens, we were hosted by the mayor of Athens, to be standing side by mayors of Poland, of Austria, even, Greece, Germany, the very countries that this Holocaust occurred, and for them to be unified together against anti-Semitism was a very strong emotion for me. And I felt it was a way to be the voice of those of our ancestors who had no voice, and to be able to come together to right some of the wrongs of those who are no longer with us. Part of what was really powerful was many of the states, many of the countries that came together, said that even in their populations, they didn't have a very large Jewish population, and yet they saw the importance of what we're saying, that hate is hate. And we all signed a joint declaration to adopt, which our city had already done, because our city has always been very proactive fighting anti-Semitism, but there were other cities and countries didn't. But one of the items was to adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is, the International Holocaust Remembrance definition, to also encourage education of their communities. Part of the problem with hatred is many people are not educated to understand history. For example, even in our city, at our last council meeting, we have voted that we're going to, in May, which is next month, have American Jewish History Month. And the other mayors also said that they would consider doing that as well, in terms of education, to create awareness to the law enforcement regarding any sort of anti-Semitic acts. Again, this is something that we as a city have already done. And very, very important as well was to promote, interfaith diversity, relationships, because I think that also, we all recognize that's also in terms of having the allyship. So we all signed that declaration, and I believe that, I brought that home, and clearly our city has always been on the forefront, but I am aware that other cities that signed it are have fallen through and are continuing with those items as well.
That's great. And were there certain insights, maybe about policy, that you got out of that conference?
I think, to be honest with you, because our city has always been a city that has been on the forefront of fighting anti-Semitism, I feel that we were able to be at the forefront for them in many ways, in terms of in terms of what we have done thus far. We had already adopted the IRA definition. We already have had a human relations commission where we deal with diversity and interfaith relations. For example, each time that I have been installed as mayor, I have had all of the heads of all, any faith in our city, whether it's a church, a synagogue, I had them all on stage to provide the invocation each time I become mayor. So I've always been somebody to unify different religions, faiths, cultures, so that we can all feel that we are looking out for one another. So what I got out of it was more of a function of those states or countries that maybe when they first came to it didn't necessarily say that, you know, they had a strong Jewish population, but they left feeling like they understood the importance of fighting against anti-Semitism, regardless of their population, that they understood that this is hatred and this is divisiveness.
So I can imagine that other cities could benefit from your clarity about your definition of anti-Semitism, because that's a big question many times. What do we call anti-Semitic? What do we not call anti-Semitic, especially when it's about Israel or Zionism?
And that's right.
Yeah.
And I think at this conference, what they were focusing on was the IRA definition of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, which includes certain forms of anti-Zionism.
Right.
Right.
And we had adopted that number of years ago already. And now other cities are now starting to follow suit to adopt that definition of anti-Semitism.
That's important. And I remember from my years in Amsterdam and working with the city of Amsterdam many times in projects that also training law enforcement is quite a task to have them understand when is it hate and when is it not hate, and how to react as police people in such situations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our police, I believe, has been the model of that. I'm very, very proud of the fact that our police has been a model in terms of providing a safe city and understanding, hate versus, free speech and what is protected under the First Amendment and such versus what is considered a hate crime.
Right.
The defacement of the menorah was a hate crime. So the vandalism of the synagogue was considered a hate crime. So I think our police is very, very well versed into what is legally under the law, considered a hate crime versus free speech. But regardless, we have put a tremendous amount of focus on safety, that everybody in our city feels safe to worship in any form in their house of worship, whether it be a synagogue, and clearly right now synagogues have been targeted, but whether it be a synagogue or whatever form of worship, that people need to feel free in our society to be freely safe to worship as they so choose. And police are a big part of that.
I'd like to add something, clarification for our audience. We've talked about the IRA definition before, and you can actually, if you go to our YouTube page, it's the top right. But what it also does is clarify what is free speech in examples, and hate speech. And I think that helps law enforcement in other cities understand not just physical acts, but actually when someone says something, the definition defines what's free speech and what's hate speech. And it's very important.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I think that is very important.
Yes.
So we basically talked about what Beverly Hills is doing right now, but what's your wish list for both Beverly Hills and other cities? Where do you see that we need to move next in what we do?
Well, I think from my perspective, it's really about speaking up. It's about being there. I mean, obviously we talked about IRA, we as a city adopted an ordinance against BDS. There was a period of time here in California where they were taught, we fought the ethnic studies program that we thought was anti-Semitic. We adopted an ordinance to colleges and universities regarding anti-Semitism that we see happening in colleges and universities. So from my perspective, and in terms of my wish list, is that we really never stand down, that we continue to fight anti-Semitism, that we continue to speak out against it, that we are proud. Like, for example, I am, always saying, I'm a proud Jew, and to wear that with pride and with honor, and that to me is very, very important, that we just don't allow anybody to try and make us be afraid, make us feel that, we lose our sense of fight, that like my mother said, never give up, that we have to be the voice of all the generations that are no longer here, that we have to make sure that never again really is never again, and that never forget. Every day of my life, every part of my blood is that I do not forget, and I live my life in such a way that I will always do everything within my power to make sure that it is never again.
Mayor, what do you think realistically any city that deals with anti-Semitism can do to further the commitments of the mayor's summit against anti-Semitism?
Well, I think, again, I think we start with, I think a city needs to understand, as we talked about, what does anti-Semitism mean? And, I do believe that the IRA definition is a perfect example of understanding what anti-Semitism means. It doesn't even get into a political conversation, because as soon as you get into a political conversation, that's where you create divisiveness. And this, to me, I think is something that where a city should start, is to look at the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. I think the element of education, of people understanding the history, understanding what it means to really focus on diversity, the elements of, we need allies. We need to be able to, in a community, not see that there's differences, because that creates a divide. We need to see hate as hate, and not say, oh, well, I'm not Jewish, so this is not my problem. This is hate. It's because that's exactly what happened in the Holocaust. First they came for one group, then they came for another group. So if we could all unify to see that if it's not your religion, or if it's not your color of skin, or if it's not your culture, that it's about humanity. And that's what I've been fighting for. I've been fighting for the soul of humanity, because this is how we can destroy humanity, if we see it as us and them. If people are able to see that this is really about human dignity, about the right to exist, and the right to choose and respect one another, and see that as much as we might come from different diverse backgrounds or different diverse religions or such, that we have to find a way where we work together in communities and really come together. And that's what I was saying, that in our city, when we've had these anti-Semitic incidences, I not only see those who are in the community that are the same faith as I am, that are Jewish, stand side by side, but I want those who are not to stand side by side and say, no, I stand with you because I see this is hate and this can destroy us. So I think that's what I would want to see other cities across the world do, and other countries across the world do, to see this as hate.
Yes.
And not, if it's not them, it is their problem, because this is humanity.
Yes, absolutely. You quoted the quote that Martin Niemöller, I don't know if correctly pronunciation, said, about they came for the trade unions, etc. But really, until people understand that it starts with the Jews, but it doesn't end with the Jews.
Absolutely.
And so everyone has to take this seriously. So we're coming near the end of the program. We're going to give you a chance for last thoughts, but quickly, are there any recommendations you have? For example, if someone in Beverly Hills sees something anti-Semitic, they pick up flyers, what are they supposed to do?
What they do immediately is they call our PD. That's they call our police department and say, I found the flyer, in front of my home, or such, or they see anti-Semitic slogan that somebody wrote on a sidewalk or on an alleyway. So usually they'll call PD. I am a very accessible mayor, so I will also tell you that they also reach out to me immediately because they know how passionate I am. But first thing is our police get involved, because then, we have cameras everywhere in our city. And since I became mayor this last time, I have put in that our cameras are watched 24 hours a day. So it's called the Real-Time Watch Center. So we are able to, go back to our cameras or see our cameras if things are happening. But, we definitely immediately, we have a wonderful response time from our police department, and that's generally what happens. And then we have a very tight-knit community. There's a lot of residential chats. So people talk amongst themselves. I'm on many of the residential chats, but people really look out for one another, and immediately really try to make sure that if anything, it's whatever it is, you see something, immediately act and let our police department know, and they'll investigate to see, is this free speech, is this hate speech, etc. Is this vandalism, all. And so they need to be able to do their investigation.
Thank you. The reason I specifically asked this question is someone I know whose business is in Beverly Hills but lives in a different neighborhood picked up the flyers off the ground. He told me this, showed me the picture. And I said, well, did you report it? And he said, when it would not be the Beverly Hills police, it would be the LA police. And he said, no, what would the police do? So that's why I particularly wanted you to say that in Beverly Hills, this is what happens. And we hope, now I'm talking in my voice, we hope that other cities also will have a responsive police department so that people don't say, oh, what are the police going to do?
Yes, no, Beverly Hills has a very responsive police department, and they always say, whatever it is, if you see something, say something, and we have a very, like, on all of our police cards, it says police and community together. We really feel that way about our police department, our fire department, our schools. We really value our first responders as they do us. It's a very strong community feeling in our city.
Well, let's see if we can help, if this podcast will help clone that.
I hope so.
But do you have any last thoughts?
I would just say, to me, first of all, I want to thank you for doing this podcast, because this is exactly what we as a world need. As I was saying about education, as about a voice, about not having a fear to have a voice and put yourself out there. That's exactly what you're doing. And I would just say that, as I've said, I to my very last breath will always stand up, and I will always speak out against anti-Semitism, and I will never, ever, ever give up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you
so
so much
much.
for having me. Thank you again. It's great to see you both.
And we
Thank
thank our listeners for listening. And those of you who have not yet seen Evelyn's documentary, Never Again Is Now, you can see it on Amazon and YouTube. And you can learn about my free nonfiction Holocaust theater project, Thin Edge of the Wedge, at thinedgeofthewedge.com, which is testimonies of both survivors and saviors, which today we need bystanders to become upstanders. And as we close every program, we say, please, without putting yourself in physical harm, speak up against anti-Semitism and all hate.
Yes.